Live everywhere.
Daily Co's Radio on netrootsradio.com presents
David Walton. Kagro in the Morning Show. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? It is Monday, July 25th, 2016. A few minutes behind, even though basketball camp is over with. New delays at the new/old camp. Oh, look at this. I have only 4 days left to upgrade to Windows 10. Now, offer expires on July 29th. This message brought to you by, well, I guess for free by me, for Microsoft. Anyway, I got some advice over the weekend. Trending in favor of upgrading to Windows 10. So last minute available for those of you who object to the upgrade to Windows 10 to speak up. I find that the trending analysis is that if you upgraded from Windows 7 to Windows 8 and were disappointed, you can't be too much more disappointed by Windows 10, and Windows 10 fixes much of what's left wrong with Windows 8. Is that everyone else's analysis? Let me know if there's anything I need to look out for. But I don't know. I guess I'm using Windows less and less. So I suppose even a disaster won't be too terrible. Hey, what happened over the weekend? Anybody look at anything? See anything happen over the weekend? Armando, if you're available, perhaps it would be a good day to talk to you. Greg Dworkin, of course, will be out for the week, vacationing, as I should be, I guess. Maybe it's a good time for me to take the week off. But I understand there's a convention going on, and it's a Democratic convention, and there may be some things of interest to monitor here. When we last left you, I noted in this morning's post alerting you that we were live before Bill was able to alert you that we were live, but he does so faithfully each day. And we'll tell you how, by the way. Kagro X, that's me, David Waldman. It starts with a K. So does Kane. Is it coincidence? We're about to find out. It was a very mysterious weekend filled with all sorts of conspiracy theories, spelled with a K. And we need to catch up with all of them. In addition, if we get a chance, we might talk to Armando if he's free, just because when we last left you on Friday, the word was that it was Tim Kaine for VP on the Democratic side. Still a strong rumor at that point, but nothing more. And we were still speculating as to whether or not the announcement would be made Friday or Saturday in advance of the, well, not in advance of the news schedule, but in contravention to the normal situation. Wow. All right. So much to catch up on. Because, like I said, when we left you, we were rumored to be getting Tim Kaine, and it was a meh at best among many of the people that were chattering about it early. There were a few Kaine supporters, longtime Kaine supporters out there who said, you're really going to be surprised. He's really going to surprise and delight you. It sounds like one of those mission statements that you occasionally see on a corporate site. All right, let's make sure that this video isn't playing. It turns out that everybody loved the rollout. There are still a few anti-Kaine holdouts, and the things that he did in recent days that worried us still, of course, do hang out there, do loom out there. He said what he said about banks. He's said what he's said about many things in the past. There's nothing we can do to change that. We might want to catch up on what some of those things are. All I knew was this sort of vague... I had this vague understanding that people who were concerned with such things were disappointed in statements he said relating to the finance sector, and I didn't know what they were. I will say this, though. Being a Virginia resident and a Virginia voter, and someone who's voted for Tim Kaine twice, I will say this. I guess 3 times. Lieutenant governor, too? Was he not lieutenant governor? I can't even recall. That's basically part of the problem. I was like, well, okay, I suppose he's better than the alternative, and I never really got the sense that I was voting for any sort of Democratic hero, progressive or otherwise. It just didn't feel that way. And I don't know whose fault that is. Probably my own. Anyway, the rollout went about as well as could possibly be expected. And this despite the fact that Armando even specifically warned against crossing over into the Spanish in the rollout speech and saving it instead for a spectacular exclusive interview with the Spanish language channels afterwards. But I don't even know if that came to pass. But endless praise via Twitter. If Twitter was your news source, particularly liberal Twitter over the weekend, as it was for me, well then, you got the sense that the Kane rollout went as well as could possibly be expected. I, of course, was busy shepherding the kids around Charlottesville, Virginia, in search of Pokemon. I don't play the Pokemon game myself, but I might as well. I just spend so much time with it. Somebody has to look where we're going, I guess, and that falls to me, since I'm not looking at a computer screen for Pokemon anyway. I'm looking at a computer screen looking at you guys listening to Tim Kaine roll himself out for the vice presidential nomination. And lots of praise. Great speech. People were fired up. There was lots of news, lots of who is Tim Kaine profiling going on that put a fantastic spin on everything. And it was looking really good by the time I looked up from my computer screen. It was very nice, by the way, down there in Charlottesville. And check this out. So we went to this night. Well, we were on the downtown walking mall where we thought it would be rife with Pokemon, and it was. But of course, we were having our difficulties because, as it turns out, here's the huge downside to the Pokemon thing. We find out that the kids' mobile technology. One, they have mobile technology. I mean, come on, what's the complaint? But of course, it's not the very latest and greatest mobile technology, and so it's all horrible and it all needs to be replaced. Well, okay. I mean, I need a new phone too, but I really wasn't counting on having to get new equipment for the kids. But constant complaints, despite the fact that we were out playing their Pokemon game, and we were out for no other reason. But, you know, our younger son is actually working off of an iPod, and that's really not built, I don't think, to handle the processing of this Pokemon Go game. So he kept getting kicked off the server, and it was hardly worth him being out. Every time he saw a Pokemon, his iPod would crash. So that was a little bit disappointing. So instead, we did go to something fantastic down there on the walking mall, the downtown mall in Charlottesville. Can't recommend it enough, of course. Those of you who have been there know exactly what I'm talking about. If you haven't, and you find yourself in Charlottesville, go. Anyway, we went to an escape room, which I had never heard of, but as it turns out, they're all over the place, all over the world, literally. But the escape room in Charlottesville is sort of a live-action mystery game / physical puzzle sort of a place. They lock you, figuratively speaking, into a room, a themed room, all decorated with all the things you need for that theme, and a mission to escape from the room within an hour based on clues that you find related to the story and theme in this room. All the clues you need to solve the puzzle within the hour are inside. We were in a spy-themed room, and we had to unlock. Yeah, there's a million lock boxes and puzzles, etc., in there that you have to figure out from clues that are around the place. Very exciting for the kids. They really loved it. We had a great time. Again, highly recommended that. That came out of there, tweeted our satisfaction with the place, just to have something to say, since I hadn't said anything all day long, and all the rest of you were chattering about Tim Kaine. And in our small world stories, there were then 2 Twitter followers who said, hey, I'm actually right here also. I only saw them a few minutes later, so I didn't get to figure out that I was in the same spot as a Twitter follower that I didn't already know. But very interesting. So one response, you said you were at the escape room. I just walked past that place. Of course, I only saw that thing 20 minutes later after I was 20 minutes gone from that place, so I couldn't turn around and try and find him. And then a little bit later on, someone else who said, I was at the coffee house right near there, and I thought I saw you. which is another weird feeling. Like, Twitter, I guess, will do to you. You put your picture out on Twitter, and then people get to know what you look like, and you hear from them every day, even if you've never met them in real life, and then you say, can you imagine being in that spot? I thought I saw you over there. And it's very weird to be the person who was thought to have been seen. I don't know whether I would, even staring at a very nice, clear picture right up front of a person's face just from Twitter, I don't know if I would ever trust myself to conclude that that's that person, especially if there's no particular reason for them to be in that spot. I guess if I hadn't tweeted, hey, I'm in this particular spot in Charlottesville, she might have said, there's a person that looks like that guy from Twitter who isn't, because that person wouldn't be here. That would be too crazy. But it does happen from time to time. It happened to me once, although, to be fair, I was at Netroots Nation, and so there was every reason for the person I thought I was seeing to actually be there, and they were, as opposed to just randomly out in the wild, as it were. So that's it. That's the warm-up story for the day, just in terms of telling you what's been going on in my life. How about you? Do you know what's going on in your life? I've got a few things to catch up on. First of all, let me just check in on something that flew across the screen here. Just as you know, life goes on and occasionally ends around the world. Can you believe it? A shooting in Florida. Fort Myers club shooting. 2 dead, 14 injured outside teen party. All the teen parties have the guns these days, as well as Pokemon Go. They should just stick to that. Let's see, 2 dead, 14 others injured after a shooting outside a Florida nightclub. What are the teens doing at the nightclub? I don't know. It's one of those places, I guess. So another sad story out of the gunshine state of Florida. I did see another one this morning that raised my eyebrows. Just your basic everyday gun complaint, armed society being polite, as is usually the case. A guy down in Florida whose wife told him, hey, there's some guys outside whistling and catcalling at me. So he went outside to say, hey, don't catcall and whistle at my wife, although who knows what language he used to do it. Interestingly, I guess I was expecting the story to then be, he's got a gun, so he shot the guy for whistling at his wife. No, it was the guy who was whistling at his wife who said, don't tell me not to whistle at your wife. Pow! Shot him twice. So he's not dead, thankfully, and they did catch the guy, but there you go. An armed society is a polite society, unless, of course, it decides, based on its being armed, to be the exact opposite. So we'll just have to wait and see. Is that a madman or a patriot who's out here to protect us all? Is that person going to be part of a polite society, or are they going to hold themselves outside of and above the rest of us in society and merely shoot us for not doing things their way? I don't know. That's the answer. You're going to have to sit and wait. By the way, Justice has skimmed the story here. Thank you very much. And tells me that it was a gathering of 12 to 14-year-olds down in Fort Myers. And the shooting started as parents came to pick up the kids. The latest is that 3 adults are being held. And so, I don't know. Was it a big mix-up with the kids? I don't know. I'm sure it was probably a parking incident. Hey, I need to be able to park 5 feet closer to pick up my kids. And you're taking all the best spots. I have no idea exactly what the dispute was, but what could it possibly be? What am I? I'm looking for something to justify this. That won't happen. Ooh, I see Armando is out there. I guess I'll ask him if he's interested in coming on to discuss his conversion on the Tim Kaine factor. Let's see. I have to do this live, but it may pay off. He may actually be able to come on and discuss things. I feel bad because I can't give you my own personal conversion story on Tim Kaine. I can say I read lots of wonderful things about him over the weekend, although I will say, I guess if you didn't see the speech, I got the sense that I almost felt like I was being manipulated. Why there are so many stories of wonderful things that Tim Kaine has done that are being thrown at me all at once. And of course, I know that behind most of them are, in fact, campaign operatives throwing those at journalists and saying, Are you interested in this? And of course, they're hungry for material. So it was published. Oh, yes, look at this. All right, so Armando says he may, in fact, be interested in coming on board and helping us get grounded in the actual news of the day. The convention, of course, begins today and begins broadcasting, I suppose, later on for those doing the gavel-to-gavel coverage on C-SPAN. Some of the least interesting material, of course, happens during the day, and it's the primetime speeches most people want to tune in for, if they want to tune in at all. Those will be happening tonight. Spectacular lineup in terms of the caliber of the speakers, and entertainment, unlike, curiously, the Republican convention, which was a parade of one famous name after the next saying, no, there's no way in hell I'm actually going to that convention. There's no chance I would come on and speak in favor of you or endorse you. But all the big names that are promised on the Democratic side appear ready to actually follow through with it. Let's see. The other big news of the day, convention-wise, or I guess inside baseball-wise, Debbie Wasserman Schultz, guess what? She's out. She was going to be out anyway, and I was going to say, well, everyone was probably content to let her ride out the convention and then off into the sunset afterwards. But now they're not, because of another story which could occupy the whole day and whole week afterwards. I guess I'll skip right to the end. I don't care a whole lot about Debbie Wasserman Schultz. If people feel better with her gone, I'm cool with that. There's no reason for me to keep her. I am not interested in defending her. And she's not interested in having me defend her either, more than likely. Of course, the story, as you all are aware by now, lots of emails leaked / hacked from the DNC, and there's a whole other story there, and you already know where that's going. But the emails reveal the shocking truth that many people in politics do not like one another, don't get along with one another, will not resolve to treat one another fairly, and are nasty in ways that if you found out, you would be distressed, to say the very least. And of course, if you were running for president of the United States and lost and felt that all along the way there had been this very palpable, very obvious bias against you among the operatives of the DNC, and then found out that they were emailing one another saying you sucked and that they wanted to get rid of you, you would feel very bad about that. On the other hand, if a foreign government, let's say, sponsored someone to hack those emails and steal them and dump them at a strategic moment such that it appears they were targeted to hurt the Democratic Party's chances in the upcoming election, you might be annoyed about that also. And you might be separately annoyed about both things in equal measure, in different measure, in proportionate measure. It's entirely possible. And, of course, I suppose I've run into the person that neither of the two angles of the story has bothered them. But now we break down along the lines of those who were still holdouts, I guess, Bernie or bust type guys who were like, well, just not interested in voting for Hillary Clinton because problem. They see what they want to see in the story. Others, I guess Hillary supporters turn off part of the story, or focus more intently anyway on the possibility that there was some foreign intrigue going on. That not definitively established at this point, although there's mounting evidence. So far, most of it, I believe, circumstantial, although eventually it's going to come down to digital fingerprints that will positively identify the source of the breach at some point, and they'll have to pin it on somebody. I mean, I guess if there is such a thing as a digital fingerprint, and that fingerprint is the right terminology, then I guess they'll have their people at this point. Anyway, lots of circumstantial evidence piling up for an even larger story, which has been written on with great vigor by many, and I have a large collection of stories that essentially asserts, depending on where you want to come down on your conclusion from the various, I guess, species of evidence on offer, would be, I guess the most spectacular of the stories is that Vladimir Putin and his oligarchs, who control vast amounts and probably the bulk of the money in Russia, have ongoing and troubling connections to the Trump business empire. That is to say, well, you know what? Here, let's just go to, I guess, what would be, I guess you could now consider it to be the granddaddy of them all at this point. A piece pulled together by Josh Marshall over at TPM. Trump and Putin. Yes, it's really a thing. Okay, it's a thing. He makes his case. There's a counter case and a counter case already out there. So we're starting off a little bit behind the eight ball, but bear with me, and I think we'll try and make some sense of it. Oh, as a matter of fact, this would be a great time to divert just slightly from that. Armando is free, and let's get to the good news before we get into the intrigue part of these things. On Friday, you said Tim Kaine sucked and he was horrible. And
he was. Before that, he was. He really was not good.
We all said, "Oh." And
then
it's
Saturday was
okay.
not the first time I've seen Tim Kaine. Just
I
want to get that out,
Yeah,
because
no,
everyone keeps acting as if.
I've seen him. I mean, I'm from Virginia, and I felt the same thing. I had no secret knowledge, despite the fact that he was my governor, my senator. I had nothing to offer you. I had every opportunity to tell you on Friday, well, all right, he's a workhorse, not a show horse. He's done this one. I don't know. I had no idea. Literally.
Oh, you could have sold me on that. I was arguing the politics of it.
Yeah,
So,
I had nothing for you on Saturday.
And let me give you the setup for where I was. Now, look, when picking Tim Kaine, you're bypassing people. You're bypassing a charismatic woman, Elizabeth Warren. You're bypassing a charismatic African American, Cory Booker. You're bypassing an impressive Latino, Thomas Perez. You're picking some white guy. That's how it comes off.
Yeah. Okay.
When you started it. So what for the Democratic Party to go for some white guy?
Yeah.
It would have been very troubling, and I just didn't think he would help or energize or anything. But I was really concerned about, frankly, the optics of it. But and I have seen Tim Kaine. I saw him when he was with Hillary Clinton about 10 days ago. He was terrible. Awful.
Well, okay.
Just low energy, blah, put you to sleep.
Okay.
I don't know if it was because he was so excited about being picked. I don't know if this is who he really is. You know, I've seen him a number of times. He'd never been like that. He'd never been that good. Don't anybody telling you otherwise is kidding yourself. Okay, this isn't the Tim Kaine they all knew. This is a new and improved, frankly, fabulous, fantastic Tim Kaine. Well, if that's the Tim Kaine we get, we've gotten a heck of a politician to go out there and do some work.
Okay.
And
that was
given that appearance, it wipes away they just picked some white guy. No, she didn't pick some white guy. She picked this guy because he's good. And his personal story's great, and he told it very well. And even the Spanish didn't piss me off, which surprised me.
That's good.
So it was, I thought, fabulous appearance. So if Kaine can keep it at that level, and he did pretty well in 60 minutes yesterday, not as good, but pretty well, then I think we're okay. I think we're okay with Tim Kaine. I still think, politically tactically, there was better choices, but this was not a bad choice. He was good. He was very good.
All right. So at least we understand where we stand with this. It's not that you're ready to join the Tim Kaine army. It's just you said, oh, hey, okay, this went better than expected. that's good news. Hey, what a good job he did.
No, it
Now
was
what?
tremendous. I mean, that's understating what I thought. I thought he was tremendous. I thought that was a
Okay.
terrific, wonderful speech. And under great pressure, his rollout, he came through. There's just no two ways about it. You've got to give the man credit. His moment, he's got another big moment on Wednesday night.
So it would seem.
And I'm sure, frankly, based on what he did this one, that he'll have a more polished speech. He'll have more time. He'll work on his delivery. It'll be just as good.
You should just
I would hope.
take a Michelle
I'm
Obama
actually
speech.
confident that he'll do well on Wednesday night.
Well, I mean, based on the weekend reaction, and it wasn't just you, there were many people, and that added to things. I mean, just the widespread, like I said, surprise and delight. I think, really
certainly was for me.
impacted me.
I was both surprised and delighted.
There you go. We can write mission statements now.
You know, and maybe my expectations were so low that I'm overselling it, but I don't think so. I think he was good. I thought he was excellent.
Many people did, and I didn't even. Again, like many major events, I didn't see it. I just saw
Watched
people
it on
watch
Twitter.
it, and I mean, I didn't see anybody say, yeah, he's still a boring white guy. So that's good. I mean, he certainly, it was a clutch homer at the
Right.
time. So okay,
Now, the bad stuff, the DWS story,
yeah.
how many months have you and I been like, what is she doing? She's terrible at this job. First of all, let's start with the DNC chair. The DNC chair is a meaningless job in terms of the primaries. They do nothing. They don't run the elections.
Yeah, you're supposed to do nothing.
Well,
I mean, in terms of
unfortunately, she did too much, but
Yeah.
but not in any way to impact the election. She doesn't run the elections in California. She doesn't run the election in New York. She doesn't run the election in Florida.
Yeah, the best thing people were able to, or the worst thing people were able to point to in terms of direct impact was the
debates.
debate schedule.
But even there, if she was trying to help Hillary, she hurt her. Hillary was the best debater by far. She should have had a debate every week. But then again, the Clinton people only wanted 4, and they ended up with 6 or whatever the heck, or 8 or whatever it ended up being. But there's nothing sillier than that. Now, the problem has always been, and there was a very good Politico story that came out yesterday, but I knew this already because I read a story. You sort of know these things, and I read about it as well. Hillary and Wasserman Schultz aren't close at all. Yeah, she's on this committee, but this committees have 800 people on them.
Yeah.
And she was close to Biden. And it turned out in this story says yesterday, after the 2012 election, Manley and another of Obama's guys went to him and said, we got to get rid of her. She stinks. She's terrible on TV. She doesn't do good fundraising. Let's get somebody in there that's good. And Obama said, that's too much trouble. To hell with it. Who cares?
Okay.
Seriously, that's what the story said. Obama was like, I don't want to deal with that. And my own theory is he didn't want to deal with Biden. It so happens Wasserman Schultz is incredibly close to Joe Biden.
Oh.
And to get rid of her, you have to deal with Joe Biden. And Obama didn't want to deal with Biden on it. He had already won re-election. What did he care? What does it matter? Who cares who the DNC chair is? And that's the truth. Generally speaking, who cares?
Yeah.
I mean, David, you may have a different take on it, but you tell me how important the DNC chair is.
Well, if in that function, right, not much. The focus at the DNC chair at that point would be fundraising and logistics to make sure that the convention comes off.
Now, there are symbolic DNC elections that have been important for who you're choosing, but the role itself didn't matter. When Howard Dean ran for and won the DNC chairmanship, it was an attempt to wrest it from the old thinking of raise a lot of money, run a lot of ads, triangulate, move to the center, etc. It had symbolic importance. But after Dean, you know who the DNC chair was?
Who was it next? Was it Kaine?
Tim Kaine.
Yeah. Right. Okay.
Who knew that Tim Kaine was the DNC chair? Who cared?
I was reminded of that, as I was thinking over the weekend, well, let's see, he was this, he was that. I can't remember whether he was lieutenant governor or not. I think he might have been.
No, he was
Warner's.
governor in 06, and I think he came on in 08 while he was still the governor.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he stayed. No, he resigned in 10 for some reason. After 2 years, because which is interesting considering he was no longer governor, he was getting ready to run for Senate.
Mm-hmm.
I guess that was the why. He had to get ready for his own run for Senate, and that's when Wasserman Schultz came in at the behest of guess who? Rahm Emanuel and Joe Biden.
Yeah.
Rahm Emanuel.
Yeah.
Another nice job you did there, Rahm. And she went out there. She was terrible, in my opinion. She didn't fundraise that well, but Obama could fundraise the hell out of anything, so she didn't really matter. But she was terrible on TV. Yeah, I have no sympathy for her. Plus, she didn't. She ran the DNC as a Debbie Wasserman Schultz aggrandizement operation.
Mm-hmm.
It was all about Debbie. She had sycophants and accolades she put in there instead of people who knew what they were doing. She was a disaster as DNC chair before any of this. And she's not a good politician. Listen, she's going to win by 35 points in her primary, and she's going back to Congress. But the reality is, as a politician, she's done. That's who she'll be. She'll be this backbencher congressman. Maybe she'll get a committee or something if she stays around long enough. But that's her career, and really, that's the level of her talent. She's not good at this. Is this all fair in a sense? Making her quit now? No, but who cares? Life isn't fair. She's still going to be a congresswoman. She still has a bunch of people carrying stuff for her. I'm not crying any tears for Debbie Wasserman Schultz. And the idea that she's insisting on gaveling open and closing the convention so she can get booed to the rafters. She's already got booed this morning.
Yes, I see that going on really now.
The Florida delegation, which is as friendly as it's going to get for her. It gets worse from there.
Yeah.
She's insane. I mean, someone needs to sit her down and say, Debbie, it's over. Go back to Florida. Go win your seat. That's what you're going to be. That's it. You're not running for Senate. You're not running for anything.
Yeah.
That's it. This is the height of it. If you want to go be a lobbyist, retire in 2 years, and that'll be that. Listen, stuff happens. That's the way it goes.
Mm-hmm.
But, Debbie Wasserman Schultz, being Debbie Wasserman Schultz, has to insist on not walking off the stage with any dignity.
I don't know why.
Should have done this a month ago on her own terms.
Well, certainly now I guess that's the case. I really thought
that hack was out. We knew it a month ago.
Yeah. I thought that...
What, did she think they weren't going to release it? Of course they were going to release it. And frankly, we knew when they were going to release it.
Huh.
Oh, on the hack. Not the leak, the hack.
Yeah.
New York Times reports this morning has confirmed 2 Russian intelligence agencies were behind it.
All right. Well, that sounds like... Well, okay. I mean, that's about what I expected to see confirmed. Now, of course, I expect to see a Twitter fight this morning over, well, just because the New York Times says, okay. All right, well, at some point I have to believe somebody on something, and I guess there's always room for skepticism. And
the Washington Post already reported on it. It's becoming a consensus, frankly, and it's not a surprise.
Yeah, how these things go. We've
the
seen
Russians
that
have 2
process
motivations. They hate Hillary. I'm not
okay.
sure why, but they do, and they like Trump.
Yeah, they appear to.
They have chosen to root for Trump in this election and work for Trump in this election. Now, that can be a big deal to you or not, but it's a fact.
It certainly appears to be coming out that way. And I think, the best case for why that might be comes from, I think, or originated with Josh Marshall sort of putting together this...
He certainly gave it legs. I credit him for sticking to it and really pushing it.
Yeah, but he put together the basic case for it, some of which has suffered since, and some of which has recovered. But the idea behind it being, and this part is still far from established, but you could see it just because of the kind of person Donald Trump is, and the best we know, the kind of person Vladimir Putin and the kind of person a Russian mob-influenced or mob-running oligarch is likely to be. Donald Trump has been, in the last couple of years, highly dependent, it seems, on massive amounts of investment in his stupid projects, some of which come to fruition and some of which don't, from those kinds of people, from Russian oligarchs who are sitting on enormous piles of cash because they're the head of organized crime families in Russia and closely tied to Putin. And we may have gotten ourselves into a situation where the personal net worth of somebody who values nothing in the world more than their personal net worth is dependent on staying in the good graces of Russian oligarch investors and
who
their
are beholden to Putin.
So, yeah.
That's the way it works in Russia. You get to be rich if Putin says it's okay.
Yeah. And you get to invest, and you get to, and now basically we're in a situation where Donald Trump gets to be rich if Vladimir Putin says it's okay. It would be better for the United States to once and for all, and maybe better for him at this point, to just lay it on the line and say, I've gone bust. I'm not rich. I'm just taking a bunch of money from the Russians at this point.
Well, take the Russian part out of it and think of it this way. We have
Chinese,
laws that prohibit foreign individuals and entities from contributing or spending money in our campaigns. Mm-hmm. They can't form super PACs. They can't do anything, right?
Yeah.
What Putin and Russia have just done for Trump is worth millions.
Yeah, and perhaps hundreds.
It's an illegal campaign contribution.
And for a guy who has no interest in or no ability or both in differentiating between his campaign, his corporate funds, his foundational charitable funds, it's just that much more of a mess.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think, it's funny. We're looking at this, and then there's this CNN poll and the CBS poll today. One showing a bounce, one showing no bounce for Trump. Mm-hmm. I'll, put a pin in that because I want to talk about how the media decides which poll matters. But the thing that might have a lasting impact after the dust settles after the conventions is this Putin story. That's got to be pursued.
Yeah,
the media can't ignore it. It's at this point it's made the front of the New York Times, and we know the New York Times sets the agenda still in many ways.
Yeah, so it's not that the media has ignored it, although there are certainly those in the media who intend to push back, and it's never unfair, of course, to push back. But it's been interesting watching people say, "Oh, come on, this sounds like a horrible conspiracy theory," and I guess in a sense it does. It sounds like an early, like a 60s, 70s era James Bond thing, evil dictator, perhaps with Russian ties. Usually, they never went so far in the Bond movies as to make him president of Russia, but
they could have.
Yeah, I mean,
that'll be the next one,
right? These days, you could get. Then it wouldn't have been believable. These days, it somehow is. But yeah, this is really rather incredible. And every time there's sort of official village-type pushback, I am reminded that not only was there the same sort of pushback on the U.S. attorney scandal, but that it was Josh Marshall on the other side of it again, saying, I think there's a story here, and official journalist circles saying, nah, you're inventing things where there's nothing. And then it turned out, why my, it's exactly as you said. Gee, yeah. I'm sorry about that. I hope no elections for president that might, end the United States as we know it take place in between now and my apology.
Yeah, well, that's,
I don't. That would be bad.
The media's been terrible. I mean, and normalizing this would be something they can't. And I think it's reached the point that they can't ignore it. Mm. But they ignored Trump's insanity. I mean, it's it's remarkable that someone who, frankly, needs to be examined for his mental health is treated as a normal candidate for president.
Yes.
You think I'm exaggerating? You don't think that his mental stability is questionable?
I do. I agree. I mean, there's a lot going on that is super concerning, and that the fact that he's now been nominated. I mean, it's amazing what comes along with the cloak of that nomination. In addition to Secret Service protection and classified briefings, there now comes the
classified briefings. Unbelievable.
Yeah. He can't
Paul
wait
Manafort
to sell that.
To see them. Can you imagine?
Yeah, right. He's like, oh, my lobbying career just went through the roof.
I actually have a question on getting him cleared to see classified information. Paul Manafort, I mean.
Yeah.
I mean, there is no dispute that he worked for Putin through the Ukrainian president, who was Putin's puppet, the old one, the one who got ousted.
Yes. I suppose the only dispute, if somebody felt like disputing it, would be, well, he's not Putin, but
that's not much of a dispute there, is it?
Not really. Okay, well, certainly Putin's close associate and former, I don't know whether they call it, what do they call it in Ukraine? President? I don't know.
A president.
Okay.
They were presidents, yeah.
Okay, co-presidents. Both, there's no disputing that, and he's got more people than just that who have had some professional experience working for either, the leaders of client/puppet
well, listen,
states.
On the campaign, that's, that happens, I guess.
Yeah.
I mean, the optics aren't great. I'm talking about classified information.
Oh, yeah.
Government information. I mean,
I don't know how
Manafort
often that
can't
happens in campaigns.
see it, but Trump's going to let him see it, right?
Yeah. Otherwise, I don't know what the hell he's doing around there. I don't see how you let him run the campaign and keep him
not
in
know
the
what's
dark.
happening. I mean, you got to let him know, right?
I assume you get somebody with you in the. I don't know. Well, maybe not. I mean, I suppose if it's up to the. Well, if it's up to the national security,
the DNI has said he's giving everybody.
Yeah,
classified briefings.
I mean,
now,
he'll
let's
give
be clear.
Trump the
These
briefing.
briefings are nothing.
No,
I mean,
but
they're like, there's trouble in the world.
There is. I wonder how many people they let in with him. Of
the briefing. There's trouble here. ISIS is in Syria. Whatever else they tell them. I mean, but I think you could have just read the New York Times and get the same briefing.
I guess so. Here's breaking news, though. Speaking of ISIS, now we know it's true. I guess France 24 reports that the suicide bomber in Germany pledged allegiance to ISIS. So it's valid now. He pledged allegiance. That's the test.
I'm not sure he was intending on being a suicide bomber. I think he, messed up.
That's what it sounded like yesterday.
He didn't kill anybody except himself. I don't think that was the plan.
He could have done that at home. But he had pledged allegiance to ISIS, and so...
There was another story that I thought
in English.
Was waiting for developments. I don't know if you've heard anything.
What?
An Austin police officer was killed in his home.
No.
I don't know if that was a domestic dispute or something else. It certainly
I haven't seen.
Would be something if someone went to his house and targeted him. I hope that's not what happened.
Right. Well, it's hard to tell. I've learned from watching there are so many reasons you can be shot to death in your own home. Many of them have nothing whatsoever to do with who you are. You're just in the way.
Right. I mean, I hate to say it, but I think that's more likely here. That it was one of those more, excuse me.
Yeah.
One of those more mundane gun situations that we're all too familiar with.
Yeah, you have to wonder, of course, but hopefully people don't inflame it into anything. We can wait to find out what happened with a single police officer in Austin. I noticed nobody says
at
anything.
His house. His house.
Well, I mean, nobody had anything to say. Oh, it's a Black Lives Matter assassination of a blue life. Yeah, it wasn't the case when the cop's 3-year-old son shot himself in Colorado. Nobody thought, oh, well, Black Lives Matter assassinated his son.
Yeah. So far, no one's made that leap, but It's early.
I guess so. I'm sure it's out there on Twitter. Yeah. Oh, by the way, now just jumping back to another point, because this struck me when you were saying that Hillary and Debbie Wasserman Schultz don't have that close a relationship.
No, they don't.
But I mean, it certainly struck me. She had a large, outsized role in Hillary's 2008 campaign, and currently, I guess, is going to be not such a big deal, but honorary chair, which isn't huge, but it's it could be nothing.
Yeah, exactly.
Right now.
It was a fig leaf.
Should be.
No, and let's be clear. There were like 20 co-chairs. In 2008. Look,
okay,
in October 2015, Podesta went to the White House and said, "Let's get rid of Debbie Wasserman Schultz now."
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, he wouldn't.
And Obama said,
if that was something.
I don't want to do it. I mean, that's twice. In 12, Obama said, who cares? I don't want to do that.
That argues in favor of that. I mean, if Podesta goes, it's not because he says, you know what I should do is, this will really piss Hillary off because they're so close, but I'm going to go and ask. No. Okay.
Well, it's Obama's call. I mean, even today.
Yes. But I'm just saying that John Podesta wouldn't be a guy who says, I know Hillary loves her to death, but I'm going to go and see if I can get her fired. He would.
Yeah, even now, they had to go ask Obama for approval on this. If he said no, it wouldn't happen. She'd still be the DNC chair.
Well, yes.
I mean, that's how it works, folks. The president runs the party.
Yes.
Until he's no longer the president. Now, look, I mean, the candidate will be, for all intents and purposes, deploying the resources. But that's at the good grace of the president saying, fine, go do it.
Oh, there is a transition period here, particularly in an election like this one, where at this point, even the physical occupancy of the DNC building transitions from the current president's people over to the candidate's people. And they physically begin to occupy the space and take over the work and direct the organization. That does happen. Presidents, I suppose, can drag their feet or put their, or resist to some extent. But the usual politics of it is, at this point, the DNC apparatus gets turned over to the nominee.
Absolutely. That's absolutely true. And the DNC chair, whoever that person is, generally becomes a complete, not that they weren't basically a figurehead anyway, but look, a normal DNC chair, in my opinion, there are some exceptions. Dean was certainly different, but look at McAuliffe. All they do is they go fundraise and they go on TV. That's their job. Mm-hmm. They don't actually run anything. They have another day job for the most part, right? When Tim Kaine was governor of Virginia, he wasn't spending 30 hours a week as DNC chair running the show. There
are different types, and sometimes they even take different titles of DNC chair. There are those who kind of do it full time and devote all their energy to it, and then there are those who are sort of general chairs, who typically elected officials who have presumably other jobs. At some point.
In theory, they do, right? I mean, you shouldn't have time to be DNC chair and governor of Virginia.
Yeah, but then, so they're usually having other people, the executive director
doing this stuff,
doing the serious work,
and let's be honest,
show up on weekends.
You should put people that know what they're doing in there anyway. I mean, to a degree, it's about, other than the fundraising, or even the fundraising. Who should I fundraise for? Who's organizing the events? But the spending, the ad spending. Well, where are we going to spend our money?
Yeah.
Well, we're not going to. Am I putting it up to the Debbie Wasserman Schultz making those calls? God, I hope not. But who knows? Maybe that's why we got clocked in 2014. I don't know.
I think so. Or many people certainly want to hold her accountable for that and other losses.
Well, listen, you want the seat. You take the hit.
Well, that's the job. Yeah. There's no doubt about that. By the way, now that Schultz will be moving aside, I'm reminded Justice makes a good point that we ought to announce. So Donna Brazile will, I guess, be moving into this.
She's going to go back to a job that she knows the ins and outs of the DNC. And
she's been vice chair for
and the Sanders camp is very happy and saying so. Jane Sanders is applauding the choice of that. So did Bernie. So did Jeff Weaver.
I guess before they did that.
Listen, this is
Bernie
all set
Twitter
up for Bernie having a rip-roaring great speech, ripping the shreds to Trump tonight, of Trump tonight, praising Hillary to the heavens. And this whole Dems in disarray thing, frankly, ends at that point.
I guess so. I mean, once if the guest list that was announced turns out to be true, then that's 100% better than the Republican convention in terms of disarray.
I know 4 names from tonight. You can tell. Well, 5 I know. And in prime time, of course, it's going to be the First Lady, Michelle Obama.
Yeah. With her own speech.
With her own speech. It'll be Bernie Sanders, who got moved at his insistence, and that's fine, to the 10 o'clock hour. Bernie's got to keep it to 20 minutes, I think. I hope he knows how to do that. He can't push Michelle Obama to 11. That's not going to be allowed, Bernie. We're if we have a band, we're playing you off the stage.
Got a bunch of bands.
Huh?
There's a bunch of bands, but
good. Like the orchestra
band
is there. They're going to play you off like at the Oscars. You're going to have to. They're going to cut your mic. The First Lady's getting on at 10:30. Period. That you could have gone for 40 minutes if you would have not been on the primetime hour. You insisted. That means you got to do 15, 20 minutes.
Okay.
Because Astrid Silva is also going to come on for about 10 minutes between her, and someone's going to have to introduce Michelle for 5 minutes. So Bernie,
I'll do it in a minute.
You got 20 minutes. That's it.
Okay. Well, they could leave it up to me. Everybody, here's Michelle. I'm done. Next. I'm very good at this.
Yeah, they could just say, ladies and gentlemen, the First Lady of the United States, Michelle Obama. That would be kind of cool, actually, if they did it that way. But you know how it is.
Yeah.
Almost certainly someone's going to come out.
Somebody's honor.
And talk about how great she is, and that'll be fine. It won't be President Obama.
Right.
I'm almost certain about that.
No, not likely.
Yeah, he's coming on Wednesday, and he gets 30 or 40 minutes.
Have one of the daughters.
The president gets 30 or 40 minutes, by the way.
Well,
and the vice president gets 30 or 40 minutes.
Sure.
On Wednesday. So everybody else that's speaking on Wednesday, you're not going to get that much time.
No. Well, it should be this. What a mess. I don't know. I'm just thinking.
In a way, they got too many people.
Yeah.
Tonight, Booker's speaking as well. Cory Booker, who's fantastic at speaking. I mean, there's a lot of things I don't like about Cory Booker, but his presentation is fantastic.
All right.
So you got that. You got Booker, and of course, the keynote speaker now, officially designated the keynote speaker, has been Elizabeth Warren.
Tonight.
Who is also speaking tonight.
Okay, that is a lot. They should just start now. They might as well. I don't know how they're going to fit all this in.
They're going to need the time. I mean, from 9 to 11, you're going to have to get in Booker, Warren, Sanders, Astrid Silva, and Michelle Obama. And Michelle Obama's going to speak for 30 minutes. And Elizabeth Warren's the keynote, so she gets 30 minutes. It's a really jam-packed Monday night. Wondering if maybe they should have moved somebody over to Tuesday. Now, Bill Clinton's going to speak for a long time on Tuesday. And let's hope he's good.
Usually, yes.
I'm worried about this one. I hope someone... he's lost his fastball, let's be honest.
Huh. Yeah?
But, don't you think?
I haven't paid that much attention to him. I'm just thinking back to
he hasn't been good this year, in my opinion.
Did well.
And listen, I think he's great.
That's his element.
You and I tried to get into the 2012 convention speech, the famous one.
Yes.
When he became the explainer-in-chief, we couldn't get in because the lines were ridiculous.
Yes.
And we went and watched it somewhere, and he was great. But I just don't know if he has that in him. So I'm a little worried about Tuesday.
All right, well.
Being a little flat. I think we need other speakers who are good. I think I would have moved Warren to Tuesday, to be honest with you, now that I think about it. But
yeah,
it's too late now.
Well, Man, I'm sure it'll all come together. And
Oh yeah, I mean, and I'm sure they've got their marks, and I'm sure the speeches have been vetted and timed.
Yeah, they're running through those now.
And I think it's going to be a great convention. I really do. And listen, we haven't talked about Barack Obama's going to be fantastic on Wednesday, I think. And I think Tim Kaine, if he's as good as he was on Saturday, will be fantastic. We're going to have a great convention. And that goes to an interesting segue to the polling issue that I was talking to you about. I don't know why Greg wasn't here today, because he would have, what has he got? Meetings? Was he taking care of kids?
Vacation, taking care of himself.
Oh, okay. Well, that's better. Because if it was just taking care of kids and saving lives, well, then that's no excuse.
What, are there no other doctors?
Yeah, exactly. What the heck? Get your priorities straight.
Really?
But anyway, I'll do the polling thing. The two polls that came out. One, the CBS poll. As you recall, the CBS poll from a week ago got a lot of attention because it showed a tied race. This was the pre-convention poll, right?
Okay.
And the CNN had a pre-convention poll that had Hillary up 7. That one didn't get that much attention. People didn't like that one so much. They liked the tied one. So they talked a lot about the CBS poll. And interestingly, both organizations issued polls today. And the CNN poll had a nice bounce for Trump. He now leads in their poll by 3 points. He went up 9 points.
That's
and
pretty bouncy.
Hillary went down. No, he went up, 6 points. And Hillary went down 4 points for a 10-point swing.
Much more
Now, what's interesting about that poll, and people need to follow these things in these polls, you've got to look at the demographic breakdown. They, as opposed to their poll from 10 days ago or however many days ago it was, they see a much wider electorate now. Now, that's not implausible finding after a Republican convention. White people, especially white racist people, would be very enthused by that convention and feel excited about voting for Donald Trump, who finally has legitimized their racist views.
Right.
So, and in particular, he got a big bump among white non-college voters. And, I'm going to be that guy. We know who that voter in many ways represents. So that's what's happening. In fact, it's pushed Trump to a 22-point lead among whites. Now, that isn't disastrous for Hillary at this point. She has her convention, and there's lots to do.
Yep.
Assuming this snapshot in time. Remember, Obama lost whites in the 2012 election by 20 points. 20 points, 59-39. Hillary is running 2 points behind what Obama was running then at this point. But again, this is right after the Republican convention. That number's just not going to hold. We know that. In addition, the CNN poll shows 66-21 Hillary winning among non-whites, though her lead among women narrowed to 3, which if it holds would be devastating for us. I don't think it will. So what you're looking at, though, is all these confluence of things and expecting a wider electorate, which I want to repeat this because people forget this. In the last 40 years, there's never been an election where the white electorate has increased from the previous election. So, for example, in 1992, to pick a year, or 1988 to pick a year, the electorate was 86% white, 85% white. And it has gone down steadily to 2012 when it was 72%. It has gone down steadily every election. It didn't remain flat. It's always gone down. CNN's poll today predicts white vote will increase by 2%. That's not going to happen. The worst case scenario, I think, for Democrats is it stays at 72. So what you're looking at, the other thing is when you look at the non-white vote and it says 66-21, I think it's going to be bigger than that, but nonetheless it shows that in their totals they're not including 11% of white, 13% of whites, of non-whites, while there's only 10% of whites undecided. Finally, there's the issue of the where do the third party votes go, and we don't know that yet. But my suspicion is, as we get closer to the election, they move to Clinton and away from Trump. And given all these negative things, it's within the margin of error, right after the Republican convention. Okay. And if you believe the New York Times, it's tied. And if you believe the New York Times, there was no bounce from that convention. So you can pick your poison. Today, of course, the media picked CNN as the poll to pay attention to. When before the convention, they picked the CBS poll to pay attention to. Okay. So it just goes to show you can't really pay attention to these things. Now, I asked Mark Murray on Twitter. Mark Murray is the political director for NBC. If NBC was coming out with a poll, he said, "No, we don't see any point to polling in the middle of the conventions. We're going to wait till they're all wrapped up and then go out in the field." Now, I think a Republican would argue you're actually going to skew that a little bit Democrat then, because you're going to go after their convention. Mm-hmm. And they might have a point, but certainly it's better to wait till both conventions than to poll in the middle of two conventions to have any real meaning.
Well, certainly, depending on what it is you're trying to do. I mean, to me, I'm hopeful that there will be some conducted because I want to see those distortions. I like to see the bounces and see what they're like.
I think more information here, as long as you know what you're looking at.
Yeah.
It's fine. Now,
but reporting
people freak out, they freak out. What are you going to worry about? You can't worry about that.
Yeah. But, I guess it's not bad, especially when Democrats go second. I guess I'm not averse to them saying, oh, my God, huge bump for the Republicans. Trump is pulling, even or even into the lead, and then a week later to say, oh, all right, well, that's over.
Yeah, I mean,
okay by me.
That's how it works. And more so with a guy like Trump, who is not a traditional Republican and hanging on to that base. The movement you're seeing is frankly, the stray and occasional voter who may or may not show up in November. I mean,
true also.
There's a couple of, there was one other thing to think about with these polls is Trump still does not have a campaign. He does not raise much money, and he doesn't hire people. He has no ground game. Now, people say, well, who cares about ground game? Matters. It matters to the tune of 1 or 2 points. This is documented, and it's true. The campaign, they don't decide elections, generally speaking, but they matter.
Yes, of course.
They matter to the tune of 1 or 2 points. And if an election's within 3, it turns a 3-point race into a 5-point race. Mm-hmm. Those things matter. So, again, you'll see a lot of freak out. I think unwarranted. I mean, you've got to understand all the dynamics. And also, just ask yourself, and this is what I tell people when I say about polling, tell me what their demographic breakdown is and how they think it's going to break. Mm-hmm. The Quinnipiac polls have Trump getting 40% of the Latino vote. That is not happening. I don't care what poll tells you that. That is not happening.
All right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And you can say, well, they're going to stay home or something like that, but they're going to come out to vote for Trump. It is not happening. They don't know how to poll Latinos. You've got to go to a Latino Decisions or someone like that to give you a better read. If you're paying attention to these big national polls and their subsamples, you're making a mistake. They don't know how to poll Latinos. They simply don't. That's, to me, if Latino vote grows, which I expect it will, if white vote shrinks, as in terms of the proportion of the electorate, as I expect it will, if I think it'll be 70%, not 74%. That's why, if the thing is tied with bad fundamentals being plugged in, I just feel like we're in a good place. I really do.
Well, it's not a bad way to enter the race to have that as your underlying.
Yeah, I mean, people say I'm a Pollyanna. I don't think so. I'm looking at the data. if we get our voters out, we win.
Yeah. Well, yeah, many people think so. But yes, it's certainly a defensible position, and it's the kind of thing that, well, poll wonks will spend all day arguing about, and I can appreciate that. And in many
poll
ways,
walks don't argue. No poll walk is arguing that a poll between conventions is meaningful. And that's NBC's argument. And it's right. I mean, it isn't that meaningful. I don't think it's meaningful for or about. If we have a disastrous convention, if Obama comes out there and rips Hillary, well,
that would be a disastrous convention. Yes, no doubt about it.
Then you could say something about it, but I just don't see that happening, and I'm not buying the CNN swing. Now, the CNN poll is very loose in the sense that they'd weight a lot less for trying to match electorates. They don't use special sauce. They're more classically Gallup in that. Well, here's our poll. 87% say they're Republicans. Well, that's what we got. They don't do any adjustments. And they do very little adjustments in terms of demos. I mean, they do some, but they have a much wider range than some polling. And you'll see a lot of swings, and you've seen them. They've gone from tied to Hillary up 11 to Hillary up 7 to Hillary up whatever. This is not the first poll they've done where Trump is led. And they've also had the widest margins outside of the Reuters online poll. So this is a poll that has a lot of swing. And that's not a bad thing. It's just not necessarily that predictive of how things will look. I've become much more someone who says that I've seen the demographics now for 40 years. And if you're having a poll that's showing a big up spike in white vote, you're probably wrong.
That's certainly defensible. I mean, the trends are obvious.
It's not a small sample. It's 40 years. It's 10 elections.
There have been more elections than that.
Well, 10 presidential
yes,
elections.
no, I understand.
There have been a whole bunch of presidential elections. There was a poll. Again, I'm going to go into the weeds.
Okay.
Kyle Klondike, who works with Larry Sabato, and he's a good guy, smart guy, knows Ohio inside and out.
That's tough.
But he tweeted about this poll from a company called Axiom, which is a Republican polling outfit, and they pick these what they call swing counties in swing states. And I can't speak to the other states, but I do know Florida, and they did Hillsborough County, which is Tampa. And in that poll, let me first give you the history. In 2008, Obama won Hillsborough by 6. In 2012, he won Hillsborough by 7.
Okay.
In 2014, Charlie Crist, in his election for governor, won Hillsborough by 3.5 over Rick Scott. That's an off-year election. And Axiom says Trump's going to win Hillsborough by 3, which would be a 10-point swing from the last election and a 7-point swing from the Crist off-year election. That is not happening. That is not happening.
I getcha.
So at that point, I say, well, I can't really. If this particular result is reflective in all the other ones, that they are swing counties, then they're full of crap. It's not a poll to be taken seriously. It just isn't.
Yeah, I certainly can't point to anything that would tell me that there's been that kind of demographic
a 10-point swing.
In Tampa? What happened?
Nothing. In fact, it's gotten more non-white.
Okay.
There are more Hispanics now in Hillsborough than there were.
All right, then.
So
there are no more Trump fans.
So you got to be careful with these polls and the timing and everything else. But look, that's how we gauge the race, because that's how we're told to do it. And at the end, the polls will be pretty accurate. In the middle, they're not.
Okay. I can believe it. Wish they'd do better work with it, but
I'll
love
put
to
a
know what's
question on the
happening.
table for you. How much should Democrats talk about this Putin-Trump thing? And should they do it in the context of the convention or outside?
Outside.
Outside, I agree. Should they talk about it a lot this week, or should they wait till next week?
Ordinarily I would say I'd wait, but I would see what develops in the papers of record over the next couple of days if they continue to pursue it. And it's a two-way street there. If the papers drop focus on it, one, that's not a good thing. I'm not certain that they'll pick it back up again, although they could certainly also be thinking, let's postpone. But if their focus isn't on it and is on the convention and you try to drive it back to that, I don't know. I would follow the lead in a sense. I mean, I know you're supposed to be setting the agenda, but I'd have an eye on what's happening in the papers. If they're focusing on it,
Democrats don't decide to push it will sit. It won't get a ton of coverage.
Yeah.
Now, they're talking DNC leaks this morning and Debbie Wasserman Schultz, but I think that's, I'll be honest with you. I don't think there's many voters that care about that. I just don't see that pushing anything. The Bernie Sanders supporters who are going to vote for Hillary, we kind of know who they are, and Bernie will either bring them or he won't.
Mm-hmm.
The ones who aren't going to vote for aren't going to vote for. I mean, you know who they are.
Yeah.
I mean, there's just not much to think about on that score, in my opinion. But we'll see. In terms of whether I would push the story, I think I would push it, but not on TV. If you can get somebody to write about it, then you keep them writing about it. But I agree, not in the convention.
I guess
let's be positive.
I would do a few things. I mean, in the right hands, with the right surrogate, in the right setting to make oblique reference to it, and occasionally, over the course of the week and into the weekend, when conversation moves around to that direction, and then, you can certainly say, and, I don't want to go too far into it, but I will say we've been seeing a lot of really interesting investigation and analysis in the media. There's some very, very, very troubling allegations being made, but I don't think we're in a position to discuss them yet. But you know what they are, and you know how troubling they are and why they're troubling. But I'll answer your question now, whatever it might be.
Exactly, that kind of thing. It seems to me that Clinton has decided and her team have decided that this election will be won or lost on who the country prefers to be commander-in-chief and who has the temperament, fitness, etc. And she leads on all those attributes. She doesn't lead in honest and trustworthy, but she leads in, who looks like a president, so to speak, or who acts like a president, who do you feel more comfortable with as president?
Right.
And if that calculation is right, then you stick to your play it safe, be, conventional, be, responsible, be all those things. Don't become a circus. And that's, as I said, I was very happy with Kane's political work on Saturday. But nonetheless, that's that type of pick, as opposed to Warren in particular, who would have signaled something else. But the best, we're the ones who are equipped to lead pick, still would have been Biden. But obviously that wasn't to be.
Yeah. And I had second thoughts afterwards. I shared them with you online Friday about Biden. Yeah, I could see where, as exciting as that was, then I guess when it came check your privilege time, and that wasn't what I had in mind necessarily, but I could see where, inside the room of Clinton advisors were that to be floated, there would certainly be someone who would say, doesn't that make you feel, or I'm afraid that people will think, as they'd be saying it, of course, meaning I don't want Biden and here's my reason why, but I will pin it on somebody else. Won't that make it look like Hillary Clinton needs a babysitter while she learns on the job if you keep Biden
I just don't think
president?
that would have stuck or been a legitimate argument. If there's one thing no one thinks is that Hillary isn't ready to be president.
I think you could have certainly overcome it, and the same objections that I thought were maybe would have been behind somebody pushing that. Say some will say that, meaning I won't.
Oh yeah, there have to be some will say.
Yeah,
I can't say
but,
that. But
yeah. On the other hand, you can simply, I think, you could probably answer that by saying, "Well, that seems a pretty sexist argument," and that would stand the person on their head. Oh no, I was saying that it's sexist to make Biden the vice president because it makes it look like she needs a babysitter. Oh well, I'm saying your argument about that is sexist because you think it makes it look like she needs a babysitter, rather than she's fine and we just. Like Biden, that can happen. And by the way, I don't think when you look at somebody with the experience that Hillary Clinton has, everybody likes Joe Biden. He's a fun guy. That's what would make him a good vice president, and maybe not necessarily president. But in terms of like serious babysitters to make sure that somebody of a Hillary Clinton
he's
level,
not exactly the babysitter.
I don't think he's the guy. I think it's maybe the reverse. Like somebody needs to give Joe Biden something to do to keep him out of trouble. All right, I'll keep him as vice president.
Well, that certainly was the image he built. I just think though that everyone accepted that Biden was capable and accomplished. There's no vetting issue, and it spoke to being able to govern, and as a contrast to Trump, it would have been effective. Mm. Plus, it was white, the whole Scranton thing, all that nonsense. But listen, it is what it is. If Kane can maintain that level, he certainly won't hurt us, and certainly could help. And he makes Virginia more secure, and Virginia's important here.
It is.
Because we may need to win through Virginia and Florida because we might drop a Pennsylvania or an Ohio.
Anything can happen. And, not shooting the moon, trying to turn a red state blue by picking somebody out of the blue pocket there.
Yeah, no, I think that's kind of, for the most part, those kind of calculations are just silly. They don't work anymore. No one delivers states.
Right.
And the fact is, King isn't delivering a state. He's securing a state. I mean, Hillary is ahead in Virginia by 5-6 points, at least by the margin. But let's take it to 8 to make sure we don't have a problem there, and we can go campaign somewhere else.
Yeah. Well, looks like it's working out.
We'll see.
So far.
We'll see. Listen, today's going to be a freak out day. That CNN poll is freaking people out. This DNC leak story has the media in a tizzy.
Well, the convention needs to start.
The convention needs to start. That's right. Cory Booker needs to get out there and give a great speech. Elizabeth Warren needs to bring the House down. Bernie Sanders needs to tear Trump to pieces. This is one other thing I would say. I think Bernie's best role, and it goes against the grain for him, but if he's going to be a team player here, this is what I think I would tell him I need from you. I need you to rip the bark off Donald Trump. I don't need you to vouch for Hillary. We'll get other people to do that. Whoever, the dead enders that you might be able to move over, you've got to scare them about Trump and say how Trump is unacceptable to you. And that anybody who would vote for Trump is just a loser in your eyes. I mean, in essence, he's got to challenge the fringe of his supporters who are willing to accept Trump. Mm-hmm. That's where he can help us. I don't need him to say, oh, Hillary Clinton's great. I don't need that. I don't know what the Clinton camp wants. But if it was my call, I would say I need 30 minutes or 20 minutes of you ripping the bark off Donald Trump. I mean, line after line after line. Watch what Elizabeth Warren has been doing. You need to do, and you need to do it in a big way. That's what I would say to him.
Well, he's not averse to it. He's been as clear as can be.
He hasn't been great at it.
He's not the best at it.
He hasn't been great at it.
He's not averse to it.
But not averse to it, and he shouldn't be. The reality is, if he does believe what he was saying, he should feel that Trump is terrible. But also, if he wants his movement to succeed, he needs to be seen as anti-Trump, because I say this to Sanders supporters and that portion of the left as a general matter. Your road to success in the future is expanding your appeal to people of color. That's where you failed in the election. And if you are not seen as an anti-Trump movement, you will never, ever win over people of color.
Yeah.
Never. I personally will resent you.
That's been a lot
Me,
more.
I'm talking about me, and I know there's people that feel as strongly about it as I do. And the disdain we have for people who think Trump's okay you cannot imagine how we feel.
Yes.
I mean, and there's white people that feel that way too. I know, women certainly, but there's the affronts, the direct racism that Trump has offered.
Yes,
cannot
right.
be considered. Well,
even the indirect,
but he's okay on trade. No,
right.
That doesn't work.
No, but it keeps mounting. The indirect evidence keeps mounting to it. It's oh my gosh, an 11th accidental retweet of a racist statement.
Yeah, did you see the anti-Semitic one by General Flynn?
Yes.
And
I mean, that wasn't like...
How did he miss that? Is he saying he didn't see that?
Yeah. It's
not
weird. It says Jews in
here. Is he
here
saying he
now.
didn't see that?
I don't know what he says. He just says it was a mistake. But I mean, it's like, well, I didn't detect it. There are subtle ones or more subtle ones out there, and then there are overt ones. And Jews. Okay, it's right in there.
It's right there.
How did you miss that one? Oh, it was
Julian Assange or whoever runs the WikiLeaks account.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. That's another angle on this whole insanity. Which
he talked about the three things, which signals solidarity with Jews. The little emotive things that people put around their names, the three bars. What do you call those things?
I believe if you're one of the racists, I believe they're echoes.
Echoes. Okay. Wow. I didn't even know they had a name for it on the racist side, but I guess you learn something new every day.
That's their thing, so...
Echoes.
Yes.
And then he says, and they all wear glasses.
Yes. Oops.
They're all nevishes.
Yeah. Right.
I mean...
When does his rape trial start, I'm wondering? Just curious about that.
Well, he's still in the Ecuadorian embassy. He's been there for a long time.
He has, I know. And then yesterday he was tweeting, not yesterday. Then someone else said that he had tweeted something yesterday. Then it turned out it was earlier. But the question of, I guess now he's joining the lock her up chorus.
Oh, of course he is.
Of course, one way to solve that is move over. Give her a room at the embassy with you while you both await justice. To be a fugitive, an international fugitive from justice on a rape charge, saying lock her up about something else. That's nervy, but of course he's sure he's being framed by the Swedish government, who's internationally renowned for framing people for sex
I don't know
crimes.
anything about his case. I know a woman has made a serious accusation against him, and he's not facing trial.
I mean, is there anywhere stricter about repression of sexual activity than Sweden? I don't know. It's no wonder. I mean, it's like being accused of a sex crime in Saudi Arabia. Not really.
It really is something. But the most amazing thing about it, think about WikiLeaks and how it started. The Manning documents, which showed a lot of significant issues. I mean, real, honest to goodness, real government transparency.
They wouldn't have gotten where they got if they didn't have some argument underlying what they were doing. They're not just blind lash-out terrorists against information security. But this time they've...
The DNC's internal stupid gossipy nonsense, that's your big scoop? I mean, if you step back from it, and I hate Debbie Wasserman Schultz. I really detest her. I think she's a problem. Mm-hmm. And I never wanted her for DNC chair. But, come on.
I mean, I prefer
someone
to know,
hates
but...
Barty. Well, so what?
Yeah.
People hate it. I think you said at the beginning of this, when I first started listening to you this morning. Oh, you'll be shocked and surprised to hear that people in politics don't like each other.
Yes, very often.
Who would have thunk it?
I did see. Yesterday Politico was trying to make a story or a sub-story about the fact that Donna Brazil, who will be taking over operations, had said, "Yeah, had
don't want me to do it because I'm going to yell at
people." Right. I mean, but basically what she had said was, it would be a terrible idea for me to comment on this story because I will be likely unfair if I speak aloud. Sanders people will find reason to take offense because I don't have my head around it just yet. I'm going to be mad. So I'd better not, because if I do, that would be bad and unfair to Sanders, so I won't. Scandal!
Yeah, see, what Donna Brazil did is what I'd never do, which is, check herself before she says something stupid. I go ahead and say the stupid thing and suffer the repercussions. That's why she's a great choice for this, because she thinks before she speaks.
I mean, does it reveal that she's got a possible bias? Yeah, but I mean, she'd tell you that.
She has an opinion on what they were doing. This was in May. I mean, and what they were doing was stupid. And Sanders, listen, we're all playing, patty cake with Sanders for obvious reasons, because when you win, you need everybody on board. But, his campaign was atrocious at the end. That's what she's saying, and I agree with her.
Uh-huh.
But the DNC doesn't get to go out there and say it. And why are you going around gossiping about it?
Yeah, I would say she's the least offensive
it's bad
of the
management.
bunch.
And Debbie Wasserman Schultz is to blame for it. She shouldn't have. She has people that are doing that on the job. Stop it.
Right there, you can set a tone where it's clear that you're endangering your job if you commit stuff like that to writing, as opposed to everybody feels this, so we all joke around. And this would have been the time to say heightened scrutiny, or maybe I've screwed up all the time that I've been here before and given you the wrong impression. But right now, we're in a period of heightened scrutiny where our neutrality will be questioned at every turn, and they'll be right to question it. Don't give them any more fuel.
I always thought that was a silly question anyway. Who cares if they were neutral or not? They don't run the elections. They don't spend any money. They don't endorse candidates. Well, they do sometimes, but they didn't endorse any candidates. There's nothing they could do. Debbie Wasserman Schultz was nothing. The only thing she did was the DNC did was decide how many debates. And if that's really what you're hanging your hat on, I mean, come on.
Yeah,
I mean, just as a realistic discussion, she had to go for a lot of reasons. The main one being it's politically beneficial to our party that she go. And that's really the only thing that matters here. Is it good for us politically to have her go or not? And the answer was yes. She should have gone a month ago.
Yeah, I mean, we have general agreement there, which I guess we could just at least take note of the fact that we could make a segue over to another similar issue that there was agreement on a month or more ago. But similarly, everybody now turns up in Philadelphia and says, Bernie Sanders supporters said, Wasserman Schultz has to go. Okay. All right. Okay. Good. So far,
everybody
agreed. So go.
You didn't see any pushback from Clinton at all.
No, although, I mean, there were certainly those who said, well, now she's going to, become an honorary chair of the Clinton campaign. That's like spitting in our eye.
Is it?
And,
okay. Sorry.
I guess, well, you know what? Everything is spitting in your eye at this point.
I mean, if everything is spitting in your eye, then what can I do?
Yeah, I mean, well, you mean she did this terrible thing and you're going to take her on as honorary chair? Well, I'm taking her out of your hair. She's not going to stay where you think she can do something, even though she can't.
What exactly do you think an honorary chair does?
I don't know.
Let me give you the key word there. Honorary.
Yes. Right. But then, of course, well, she's dishonorable. Why would you pick her as an honorary anything?
Because
you know what? It's not your.
This is a political party. This is how we're smoothing it out and getting her out.
Yeah, it's suspect. It's dumb. It's not necessary.
Listen,
I don't know what she gets out of it.
Let me give the Sanders people credit. They said this is what we wanted. Thank you. We're all moved ahead. Ben Jealous endorsed after this.
Well, all right. I mean, I
The
guess
Sanders camp is saying this is what was needed. We're all good.
yeah,
Let's go.
I mean, that's the way it ought to be in terms. I mean, I guess if you're, let me ask you, I guess if you're a holdout because of the person who's an honorary chair, then I don't think I can win you.
There's nothing I can do. Exactly.
So,
I mean, talk about it. VP is silly enough. Honorary chair of the 50 states thing?
Well, that's it. I was with you until the honorary chair. That is a little bit absurd. By the same token, they also showed up in Philadelphia as expected and said, "We got to do something about these superdelegates." Okay, we will. Okay? Yes. Good? Good. Fine then. Fine. We will.
Exactly.
Okay. Good.
No, I know you. Actually, that's worth discussing. You're not happy with that, I don't think, right?
I think I'm okay with the reaching. I'm okay with what they did because what they did was they kicked the can.
Right.
That's fine. I suggest, and they adopted. I think the argument got frozen in place too early, and they adopted the first sensible proposal out of the box, which mirrors the ones that came out of the main convention. The
is
state
that
convention.
right? The one where the non-elected ones are bound, and the
Yes.
ones that,
And so
I didn't know that had come out of Maine.
and others who had a
but
similar
I think
idea.
Maine
But
was
I
the
think
first
that was
one, you're right.
the first
That
one
was
that I
there.
took note of, certainly, and that was fully formed and written. Had been fleshed out in a workable way. But since then, I've seen better suggestions that I think would create a lot less, would accomplish pretty much the same thing and create a lot less headaches for state chairs and take a lot of the the big problem with the proposal that's leading the way now, and the one that came out from Maine, is it binds your PLEO delegates, the basically elected officials and party leaders and elected officials and others, but it doesn't bind members of Congress and sitting Democratic governors, etc., which I think is okay, because I always thought, well, they should really, I think that they should be able to kind of vote their conscience, and it's going to be extraordinarily difficult to tell a member of Congress that you can't go with who you support and all this thing. So I thought the better solution was to say you just don't have a first ballot vote, and that's a lot easier. The problem it will create for state chairs is now that the PLEOs are bound, or will be bound, and they'll be bound in proportion to the state's results. That was another decision that had to be made. Remember that initially the insistence in many in the Bernie camp was they ought to be all the superdelegates from the state should go with the winner. It should be winner take all, which is really weird and totally backwards. So okay, proportional, better approach, the one that makes the most sense. But what this means for state chairs is they now have to poll all their superdelegates and get their preferences. And so what you've done now, you've elected, or you're allocating the delegates, and you got to go to your state convention and you have to say, all right, I need 60% of my PLEOs to be pro Smith, and I got to poll them all now. And it turns out that although Smith won the primary 60-40, I have 75% of my PLEOs are Smith people. What am I going to do? How am I going to deal with this? Either I get a bunch of PLEOs to say, to hell with it, my allegiances were ephemeral, I just want to go to the convention, and switch, or else you got to say, well, my PLEOs are going, my unbound superdelegates are likewise going, but maybe I don't have to count them. But I think what that is going to end up meaning is I'm going to have to push some people who would otherwise have been elected as Smith delegates from the grassroots out. You can't go because I've got a PLEO who's going, we're over our 60, we're over our allocation. They're going. I can't push them out. We just have to take fewer grassroots delegates with us. And the bulk of the grassroots delegates then who go will end up being representing the person who got the 40%, and you're going to have this enormous tension arriving at convention where all the party insiders are for the person who, got the 60%, but if we have another insurgent candidate who won 40%, but all the grassroots people are on that side and all the party leaders are on the other side, I think you set yourself up with the same kind of tension. The reform that you imposed to try to relieve the tension as between the party insiders and the grassroots ends up exacerbating it and resulting in less grassroots participation for the general public. I think the better, and plus the administrative headache of having to figure out of polling preferences, and what if you have holdouts, and what do you do if 25% of your PLEOs say, don't answer the survey? I'm not telling you who my preference is. I guess you could say, well, we just won't send you to the convention, but I don't know how that doesn't screw you up with your selection plan. So there's no guarantee that they answer. There's no guarantee that they answer truthfully. There's no guarantee that, I don't know. I think the better suggestion was superdelegates. If you go as a superdelegate, you don't vote on the first ballot so that you can't fix that. You can't manipulate the nomination. And then the job of the state party chair there is clear. So I prefer that in terms of administrative headaches. I believe I've lost or disinterested Armando with that one. So I think that one's a much more elegant solution. I was very impressed with the main suggestion, mostly in the sense that from out of nothing, it had pulled a very decent approach. First of all, by saying we will only. First of all, by saying that this would only go into effect in 2020. I was impressed with that as a concession from the main delegation early on. And then they came up with an interesting solution that wouldn't require changing the structure of the way people got elected, but then would require manipulation after the fact. So now, upon reflection and in comparison to the idea that everybody gets elected the same way we do now, but they don't vote, that seems much easier to administer than anything else. All right, Armando, are you back with us?
Yeah, my internet died,
so
I had to switch to the phone.
Okay.
To talk. I think it's much ado about nothing in general, because I don't imagine we'll ever have an election where superdelegates actually matter. But whatever makes everybody happy. It's an interesting theoretical discussion. I do want to give just one plug to you that I am in about 30 minutes going to be driving down from New York to Philadelphia.
Very good. For
my one day at the Democratic Convention. Hopefully all my things are straightened out. I'm supposed to have a press pass.
Oh, okay.
It's supposed to have invites to some swanky parties.
All right.
Hobnob with some lobbyists.
Chocolate Fountain.
Yeah. And probably check out the protests. Maybe, if I'm lucky, create some audio for you to use. We'll see.
Nice. Okay.
And go from there. But
okay.
I do want to come back and report to you on what I see.
All
now
right.
It's going to be 1,000,000 degrees.
Yes, that's one of the things. The worst thing about a convention, if you're dressed in a suit and tie, it's horrible. Unless you're conventions are made for people who are driven around in limos, basically. If you're walking, it's a disaster. So. Well, best of luck to you. I hope you get some good souvenirs. I wonder if I should make my way up there to try and find something to buy. I have a nice set of cocktail glasses from the 1992 convention to compliment. All right, and he's gone already, so he's on his way. It sounds like internet is troublesome there. The heat is frying the internet backbones everywhere and drying up the oceans as well, and killing the undersea cables, most likely. Okay. Well, I look forward to getting a nice report from on the ground there in Philadelphia. And let me know if they're chanting anything that we can air. It should be fun. I do have a little bit about those proposals for superdelegates. I guess, let's see. I saw it written up in AP. Dave Weigel has a piece in the Post, which I may be able to read. Let's go with his thing here, just by way of filling in the blanks. I don't know if I explain things all that clearly off the cuff. Democrats vote to bind most superdelegates to state primary results. After a lengthy debate and a deal between supporters of Clinton and Sanders, the Democratic Party's Rules Committee, remember, chaired by the tyrant Barney Frank, if I remember correctly, the Democratic Party's Rules Committee voted to create a unity commission that would dramatically limit the role of convention superdelegates, binding roughly 2/3 of them to the results of state primaries and caucuses. I guess the people still free, as I mentioned, members of Congress, sitting Democratic governors, distinguished leaders of the Democratic Party, former presidents, former speakers of the House, et cetera, et cetera. I don't know what happens to, I guess one thing I meant to throw into the Debbie Wasserman Schultz discussion in terms of things that are real that the Democratic chairman can do. There's a lot. There's certainly a lot behind the scenes and a lot of procedural things that fall to the chair or the discretion of the chair or the chair's designee that make a difference operationally when the committee is trying to set policy or find the process to set policy. Make no mistake about it. If you can be in the chair, you'd rather when it comes to setting party policy and procedure in place. Wow, let's see. The thing I wanted to mention was there are, of course, 75 members of the Democratic National Committee who attend as voting delegates and who would therefore be unbound because they're not sent as pledged delegates and elected by the state caucuses or primary procedure. But 75 members plucked out of who knows where by the chairperson herself, basically open discretion. You can choose whoever you want. And when people complained, for instance, about the number of superdelegates who were lobbyists, I think chiefly the people they were worried about came to their status through this special appointment process whereby the chair picks you out of a hat. Not really out of a hat, but it picks you quite, out of thin air anyway. Essentially, though, I mean, there are no formal constraints on who the chair can pick, but there are political constraints, and the jobs usually go to people that make a great deal of sense politically for the party, for constituencies within the party, etc. It's rare that, I assume it's rare that the chair picks somebody that they absolutely can't stand and thinks are a huge danger, but the coalition politics are such that they feel compelled to choose them anyway. Because such people, I guess anybody that rises to the level that the chair of the DNC has a beef that strong with them, that's probably because they command their own coalition and base and will end up at your convention no matter what you try to do. But very often the rewards go to very often to people who have worked their butts off for the Democratic Party and are very valuable and strategic and wise picks. And perhaps just as often they go to people that would piss you off to no end if they were described to you in the starkest possible terms that are still true. Socialite, big donor, dilettante of sorts, not really somebody that contributes necessarily a great deal to the substantive backbone party position party platform, people who are leaders in their community, but rather people who are, they're wealthy and they give a lot of money and they do host a lot of fundraisers at ritzy places, and that's valuable and it has its place, but you really wish they weren't super delegates. And there are a lot of those. And that's something probably that could be looked at down the road, too, in terms of reform. Maybe the commission can take a look at that. All right. I'm not certain whether they get bound either. That would be a little easier to canvass, perhaps, because at least it would be, I guess the chair could be responsible for figuring that out. But, they're also the kind of people that can say, you insult me by asking and I'm not going to answer, and you're going to find that your money dries up if you bother me this way. The idea of canvassing them ahead of time, no matter who does it, seems troubling and overly difficult. Anyway, back to the article. The commission shall make specific recommendations providing that members of Congress, governors, and distinguished party leaders remain unpledged and free to support their nominee of choice, reads the new rules language, but that remaining unpledged delegates be required to cast their vote at the convention for candidates in proportion to the vote received for each candidate in their state. And I guess they could just move the chair's 75 appointees, if they don't already exist under the umbrella of distinguished party leaders. You could just move them there, and that would solve, at least answer the question of what to do about them, because it would be very difficult, I think, to get them to answer about their positions. And you certainly, how could you allocate them in proportion to the vote received by each candidate in their state? So they live in states, and they show up as members of that state's delegation. That's true, but they're just not connected to the state apparatus in the same way very often that elected delegates are. According to the new rules approved by a vote of 158 to 6, Democrats will appoint a unity commission of 21 members no later than 60 days after the general election, chaired by Clinton supporter, Jennifer O'Malley Dillon, and vice-chaired by Sanders supporter and former Communications Workers of America President Larry Cohen. So there you go, vice-chaired by a Sanders supporter. That commission would report by January 1st, 2018, and get a vote on its proposals by the next meeting of the Democratic National Committee long before the 2020 primaries. Probably the best thing you could do would say, let us settle this outside of the context of a convention, though the National Convention is, of course, the highest authority within the party, but it's also the wild and woolliest and most difficult to canvass and count votes in correctly. But leave it to the folks who are DNC members and have committed to going twice a year to Washington, D.C. or elsewhere and doing the business of the party in a controlled environment. I think that's probably the best solution. The other guidelines for the commission included a mix of Clinton and Sanders ideas, including expanding eligible voters' ability to participate in the caucuses in caucus states, a gripe of Clinton's campaign, and encouraging the involvement in all election of unaffiliated or new voters who seek to join the Democratic Party through same-day registration and re-registration, a Sanders demand. So, open primaries on the one hand, an interest from the Sanders perspective, and do something about the caucuses. A watered-down version of probably many of the demands of Clinton supporters who really honestly said, just get rid of caucuses. They don't work. By the way, let me interrupt here to hear from Bjorn, who I think was the first that I saw suggest the idea of simply saying, hey, no first ballot vote for superdelegates. Why not just let the states and territories vote by delegation, as called out by the chair of the delegation? Why? I guess is the question here. I guess so. And they do. I mean, when they're called out on the roll, they do vote by state. They just don't. It's not one unitary vote. You could do that, I guess, but that seems awfully divisive, and of course you have some people who have worked their tail off to make it to the convention and then say, my vote didn't even count. You know, it was 59 to 58 in favor of Smith in my delegation, and 58 of us didn't have our voices heard on the floor. That's very troubling to the individuals involved, and they probably just like it better if their votes are counted, but the substantive outcome is the same. It'd be awfully difficult to do that. I still prefer, I think, the first solution, which is that you could just say, you know, superdelegates are here to conduct party business. That's what we want you for. And if we need you to break a tie or some other knot in terms of who the nomination should go to, we'll let you know. Further suggestion, if you do that, you could have even more perfect proportionality. 3.5 for candidate A, 4.9 for B. Oh, I see. Well, I guess you could just announce them that way, but they do announce them that way. Anyway, yeah, I still think the simplest and most elegant solution is simply to say, if you're here by virtue of elected office or special status within the party organization, that's great. You'll always have a voice in Democratic Party policy so long as you retain that seat and play that role. For right now, for the specific question of who our nominee should be, I first want to ask people who have been elected to this convention for that purpose what they think. If they can't settle it, I'm happy to ask you to join the voting. I think that's probably still the best and most elegant solution. Let's see. Back to the rules. Clinton's campaign, which held a commanding majority on the committee, did not give up very much ground. If the compromise rule changes had been adopted for the 2016 presidential primaries, Clinton would likely have maintained a lead over Sanders, losing superdelegate support in some states, but coming out ahead, I guess, nonetheless. While Sanders favored the involvement of independents in primaries, the unity guidelines suggest that independents must join the Democratic Party, if only on Election Day. I think that's fair enough. Bernie didn't mind. Neither should the supporters. The superdelegate reforms, too, fell short of what Sanders wanted, so everybody compromises here. Or, accepts incrementalism. Forgot that. Right? Binding superdelegates to the results of primaries would resolve one of his major complaints, that states like Rhode Island and Oklahoma saw superdelegates flock to Clinton even as he won them handily, but it maintained the power of senators, governors, and members of the House to endorse whoever they choose, and for their endorsements to be counted in delegate totals, something Sanders blamed for creating the early impression that he could not win. I mean, that's really, wasn't that the heart of the problem? But what are you going to do? You really, honestly, the difficulty in telling members of Congress, you aren't allowed to vote for who you prefer is enormous. These people are not going to accept that. And it's a lot easier to just say, you know what? You don't get to vote first time around. They're not going to like that either, but it's a lot easier to pull off. Anyway, so that's the basics of what got suggested. There are various complaints included in a complete Dave Weigel article, obviously, but I don't think we need to root through all of that. Let me just wind things up then, since it's been a rather disjointed show. We suffer when we don't have Greg around to ground us in these things, but I suspect that the convention will give us plenty to talk about in the days to come and keep us pretty grounded. And before I hand things over then to the guys in the after show, who no doubt have a much better plan, I wanted to throw one thing out here. I just thought this was the most glaring example that I missed from the end of the week of just how ridiculous the Trump people in general really are. We all had, or there was lots of praise, you know, some of it more lavish than others, about how Ivanka Trump did in her speech at the Republican convention. It was certainly the best speech that I saw given, but that was because it probably was more at home in the Democratic Party than the Republican one. It had nothing to do with the Republican platform or candidate or anything or policy. It was just garbage from start to finish in those terms. But It was an otherwise decent speech and fit within the norms of American politics. Here's where it falls outside. You just can't do it like a normal American, right? Following the speech, Ivanka Trump has a Twitter account. She doesn't use it anything like her father does for political commentary or commentary on anything else. She uses it to promote her brand, and I don't mean it in the abstract like the Ivanka Trump brand, like the Donald Trump brand. She has an actual brand, a clothing line, and some other business ventures that occupy her time. Here's what she did with it. They took a picture of her on the stage, as is normally the case, and normally resources are spent this way. And mind you, remember, the attractive thing about speaking primetime at a convention is that it's covered on all the networks. So all the televisions, all the network stations, etc., all tuned to this. You're on. Everybody's seeing you. Guess what she does with it? She tweets out a picture of herself speaking at the convention along with this line, "Shop Ivanka's look" from her RNC speech, with a link to the Macy's store where you can buy essentially knockoffs of the clothing that she's wearing. Shop Ivanka's look. You too can wear what Ivanka wore when she gave her nationally televised speech. Can you imagine using the leverage of this? And it's kind of brilliant in a way that the light bulb goes on in her head. Oh my God, the free advertising that's being given to us by virtue of the fact that my dad has been nominated. How is that not totally wrong? Well, it's never been done before, that's all. Anyway, I actually have more to say about that one. We'll discuss it perhaps tomorrow, along with the other weird things about Ivanka that came out over the weekend. In the meantime, though, Metaphor Monday on the After Show follows. Yosemite is in settlement talks to win back its historic park names. Pro-Bundy, Oregon Sheriff Glenn Palmer is now in a war with the press after facing accusations of hiding public records. And Virginia Governor Terry McAuliffe bypasses the recent state Supreme Court ruling and again restores voting rights to 200,000 ex-felons. That's pretty bold.
From Daily Kos Radio on netrootsradio.com. You have been listening to the Kagro in the Morning Show
with David Waldman.
Here's some convention-related topicality. On the last half, they'll be reporting about how most cities evict or arrest their homeless before big events. Philadelphia is trying something new for the Democratic National Convention. And filmmaker Oliver Stone says the data mining of Pokemon Go is what they call totalitarianism. Oops, guilty.